Today we will be making a cardstock zinnia. The materials we'll be using are extra fine crepe paper and juniper. And then the cardstock colors are gumdrop green, wine, yellow corn, and yellow. We also made a couple zinnias in some shades of pink, and those colors can be found in the post. For wires, we're going to be using a 24 gauge floral wire and then a thick stem wire. We're also going to be using a yellow Posca paint marker and then an orange pan pastel. We're using the Barely Art Precision Craft glue today. And then all other tools and materials needed can be found in the post. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is cut out all of your cardstock pieces. I cut mine out using a Cricut, but you could easily cut them out by hand using the PDF template. Once you've cut all of your flower pieces out, go ahead and take your thick stem wire and your craft glue. Then you'll need your center stamen piece. It's this fringed line. And I'm going to run a line of glue along the bottom edge of the center stamen. And then we're going to take the thin end of our thick stem wire, and I'm going to roll this stamen around the tip of the wire. Make sure you wrap it really tight. And once you've finished wrapping it around the tip of the wire, you can remove it from the wire. And just go ahead and hold it until the glue dries a bit and it stays rolled together. And then we can set this aside to dry. Next, we're going to add color to our petals. I always like to use a paper towel on top of my surface when I'm adding pan pastel to anything. So take your pan pastel, and I'm just going to apply pan pastel to the center of each petal from the base up, applying it very lightly. I'm going to remove a little bit of color from my brush and then blend it into my petal. Kind of keeping the petal in between those score lines. And you can repeat this with all 3 sets of petals. Now that we finished coloring all of the petals, we're going to shape them. I like to use this kind of wool felting pad. It has a nice squish to it. You could also use a folded up kitchen towel, anything that has a little bit of give, so that you can press down into the petal to shape it. Be using a steel ball tool. And I'm just going to run the steel ball tool around the edges of the petals. And as I'm circling the ball around the edge of the petal, it should begin to cup in and curl up slightly. I'm using a good amount of pressure. You want to do this slowly so you don't get too many creases in the paper. You're going to repeat this with all of the petal sets. Okay, next we're going to shape our flower centers. So these are also the stamen, and you should have 4 small and 4 larger ones. And I'm just going to rotate the ball tool in a circle as I press down. And this should bring all of the stamen up. Kind of turn them into a little bowl. And then for these smaller ones, I'm just going to use my fingers to pull the stamen in even more so they kind of touch in the center. Now I'm going to shape my larger stamen. After we're done shaping our stamen, we're going to move on to our sepals. So you should have 4, 2 larger, and 2 smaller. And again, we're just going to be using the ball tool, just working in circular motions to kind of cup Give the sepal a cupped shape. All right, now that you're done shaping all of your flower pieces, we are going to begin building our flower. So take your thick stem wire, and we're going to be working backwards. So we're going to start with our sepals. So I'm going to take a small sepal and add it on to the thick stem wire. And you should push it about a 1/2 inch down onto the wire just to give space for everything else we're going to add. Add a bit of glue. And then we can add our second small sepal. You want to make sure these little sepal leaves are staggered, just like so. Add a bit more of your white glue, and then add a larger sepal. And then we can add our last large sepal. Should look like this once you've added all 4 sepals, making sure those sepal leaves are staggered. Next, we're going to add petals. So I'm going to take one of my larger petal sets. Again, adding a little bit of glue where it's going to rest. And then pushing my petal set down onto my sepals. Again, adding a bit of glue. And then adding my second larger petal set. Make sure those petals are staggered so they're not sitting on top of one another. Adding a bit more glue. And then placing my smaller petal set on. Now I'm going to begin adding my stamen. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue. And I'm going to take a large stamen. Slide it onto my wire. Add a bit more glue. Add a second large stamen. Again, some more glue. So I've added all 4 of my large stamen. Now I'm going to begin adding my smaller stamen. A good tool to have on hand while you're adding these are your needle nose tweezers. It's great to get in there and to push them down. Okay, next we're going to take our center stamen piece that we've rolled up. It should be dry by now, so we're going to go ahead and just spread out all of those little fringed stamen pieces. I'm going to spread them out so it looks nice and fluffy. And this will be the very center of our flower. We're going to go ahead and slide it on to the tip of that thick stem wire. So you can add a bit of glue into the hole that you left from your wire. I grab onto it with my tweezers and then just slide it right on, pushing it down with my fingers. And now you should have a flower center that's nice and fluffy and all filled out with those many stamen pieces. Next, we're going to add the little yellow details that go around the center of these zinnias. So you should have 10 of these. To shape these, all you're going to do is pinch all of the petals so they come together. I'll show you while I'm holding them with these tweezers. So you're really just folding each of the petals up. Do that with all 10 of these little center details. Okay, once you've shaped all of those, we're going to add them to our flower. Just grab one with your tweezers. Add a good amount of glue to the bottom of it. And then we're just going to tuck it in to the outer edge of our stamen. So I'm kind of tucking it in between the second and third round of stamen here. And just really push it in so it's tucked in there. And they'll be placed fairly close together, almost touching, but not quite. All right, now that you've added all of those little yellow details, we're going to take the yellow paint marker just to kind of dust the top of your stamen that are within the center of your flower and just inside of those yellow details. So that's just a nice detail, makes it look like your stamen are dusted with pollen. Next, we're going to make our leaves. So you can just set your flower aside to dry. And let's grab our leaves. For your leaves, you're going to also need your 24 gauge wire. You'll do 2 leaves per flower, and you only need 1 wire. We're just going to cut this wire in half so you have 2 6-inch wires. Flip your leaf over so you have one side that has some score lines on it and the other side does not. Flip your leaf over so that you're seeing the plain side with no score lines. I'm going to add a line of glue about halfway up the center of my leaf from that hole, and then also add some glue all the way down the stem of the leaf. Then you're going to take your wire and feed it through the hole so that the wire then lays on top of the glue on the back side of your leaf. Then you can fold that stem up and over your wire to cover it. And just firmly press down. I really like to use a brayer tool here. And then I like to roll the brayer over just that wire to really press down the paper. And then I like using it on the front side as well. And this is nice because then it gives you a little detail of where that wire is down the center of your leaf. And then you can just set that aside to dry and do your second one. And then we're going to shape our leaves. So you can go ahead and grab a curling tool. I'm just going to curl the edges of my leaves and up. You should wait for the glue to dry on these leaves before you begin shaping them. I'm being very gentle. Okay, and now we're going to add these leaves to our flower. So to do that, go ahead and take a strip of crepe paper. We're using the juniper color. And I've cut it just like floral tape. You could also use floral tape here instead if you prefer. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the top of my stem. I always like to stretch the crepe paper out just a bit before I begin wrapping. And as you're wrapping the crepe paper down, make sure you're stretching it out to get a really smooth wrap. And then you can stop a couple inches down the stem and just go ahead and add your leaves in there. So I'm just wrapping the wire of the leaf to my thick stem. And then I'm going to add the second leaf at about the same height, just directly across from that first one. Same thing, just add a little bit of glue where you're going to wrap. And then you can just continue wrapping all the way down your stem. And just make sure you're adding glue as you wrap to keep everything really secure and make sure this crepe paper wrap holds. And just be sure to use a bit of white glue at the very end of your wrap to hold everything down. Then you can kind of arrange your leaves. Just bend them out away from your flower. And then you've completed your cardstock zinnia. As you can see, I've made some in a couple different shades of pink as well. Also just using that orange pan pastel to add a little bit more detail to my petals. And those paper colors are also listed in the post. Happy crafting!